everyone. We're back after a short break. Me and Mark have been busy on other projects over the last few weeks, and we've not had a chance to record the podcast, but a lot's happened, and we have tons to talk about. As you can see, we're on a new channel. So the Help I'm a Camera Nerd podcast is now on its own channel. If you've not already liked and subscribed, please like and subscribe, because if you liked our last stuff, you'll like this stuff because it's the same. So remember to like and subscribe and share that out. For people listening to the podcast on, Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever, this doesn't make a difference for you. But if you're watching, you got to like our new channel, subscribe to our new channel. But yeah, we've got a lot to talk about today. You've probably seen some of our reviews for over the last few weeks on my channel, which is Films by AW, and Mark's channel, That Camera Nerd. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that. What's it like to review? What was it like, the items? What was the test like? Mark, we've got tons to talk about, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We've got so much to talk about. It's such a fun thing as well for us, because we love kit, right?
Yeah.
And for someone to just go, hey guys, here's some kit. Go and play with it. See what you think. It's like a dream come true. It's like when I was a kid, I loved Toys R Us, but now I'm an adult, I love kit and camera equipment or lighting, that kind of stuff. So we did the Pro AV tour. We got to see a lot of this, but didn't really get like in-depth time with our hands-on time. And then obviously you picked up the Kinefinity. You had a bit more time than me, but also then I lent it and I crammed as much as I could in to the weekend. And both of us, first Kinefinity cameras that we've ever kind of had hands-on time with, right? I've never even touched a Kinefinity camera before. So, yeah, it was it's not that I haven't kind of considered them before, because I have, because of the price range and stuff. It's just that, I'd gone to Blackmagic. That's essentially a slightly, I would say, a budget option. I don't think that the camera is a budget camera, but price-wise, it's budget option. Reds, Sonys and stuff like that are a bit more expensive, and the Kinefinity is obviously another, or used to be more of a budget option. Now it's kind of sitting in the same price range as the Red, the FX6, the Ursa 12K, that kind of price range.
Yeah, it was my first time on a Kinefinity as well, as you mentioned, and I did. It was a brand I hadn't really heard. It's a brand I have heard of, but I didn't pay attention to. Sometimes it's a stigma about, it's a Chinese brand, what's the catch? But the cameras themselves, as you actually look at them and start to look into them, they're really intriguing. They offer a lot of what we like, in terms of, the robustness of it, the flexibility of it, and then also the professional outputs, which is something that is missing when you're using a DSLR system or even a pocket like I have. But the thing about it is it's got all those professional outputs, but it's a much cheaper cost, or was a much cheaper cost than some of the alternatives. I'm thinking Red or Sony or even Arri, if you want to compare that to the Kinefinities, which is what I think they're going for. I don't think they're going to I don't think they're trying to be a competitor with Blackmagic, or not with maybe the Ursa and above, but they're trying to more have we're a low cost alternative to a Sony Venice or a Red Raptor or an Alexa Mini. I think that's what they're trying to do as a company. Whether they're successful with that is another thing, but the camera was a really nice camera. Full disclosure, it was the Mavo LF Mark II Mark looked at for a couple of weeks. And it was just such a robust camera. When you touched it, you held it, it felt expensive. It didn't feel cheap. There was no reason for it to you to think, it should be cheaper than this, because it was this is a high quality item just by feeling it. I know there's some I can think of Beats headphones where they add weights in just to make it feel more expensive. So you have to be careful to do that. Yeah. Sorry, Beats, don't don't sue me for what everyone knows. But what I found about them was that it was just a solid camera, just in terms of physically, and then the design of it was really nice. I'm not even talking about the image yet. Just the design of it, everything was where you wanted it to be. All your in and out points, everything made sense. That battery mount. What do you think of that battery mount where you can do V mount and BPU?
Yeah, I really like the battery mount. I love when you just get options built in, because obviously like the Red has a version of that, let's say the Komodo, but you have to buy an accessory. So like the inbuilt batteries, which are a good option, I think, and the Komodo X goes for V-Lock, but I like the fact that with the Komodo, I can pop that off and I can put two smaller batteries on, because when I'm mounting it on the gimbal, that gives me more flexibility.
Exactly.
And that's really nice that that's built in to the Mavo, because when I put it on the gimbal, I obviously put the smaller batteries on, and that, you know, reduced the weight. And I do have small V-Locks, but not as many, and they still cost quite a bit. That's the thing about V-Locks, even when you get the lower wattage ones and the smaller ones, you end up paying for the form factor, because you're paying for a V-Lock that's small and that has a use case, which is gimbal and stuff. So it's nice. Yeah. It's nice to just have options. That's what you really want with a camera. You know, the whole mounting system, everything about the camera felt like they'd listened. They'd listened to a bunch of users. The users had gone, this is what we want. This is what we'd love in a camera. You know, even down to like me saying that, oh, I wish it had a handle that I could press record. And
then they released
Carl
one.
saw that and was like, here's a handle that they're releasing with a record button. And it's like, it's so nice when a camera company listens to the people and they're like, this is what people are asking for. Let's give it to them. Let's do that. Let's add that on, you know, because the camera is, like you said, the build quality is great. It's a little bit heavier than the Komodo, but not too much heavier. You know, I'm not going to be like, it's minor. And it makes it flexible, right? Because you had it with that battery mount underneath, like the plate that's a battery mount that lets you put in extra batteries underneath the camera.
Like a hot
no
swap,
cables. Yeah, it attaches via just a port. Makes the camera quite, I would say, a little bit heavier. You're going to notice it, but it gives
heavier,
you,
wasn't it?
give you the option then to hot swap batteries. Now I took that off because I wanted to reduce the weight. But if I was shooting a movie on it and it wasn't handheld and it's a lot of tripod stuff, I'm going to put that back on. And it's just going to give me that option to hot swap. And I've never seen that before in any other camera, that you can put something underneath to allow you to hot swap. So they're thinking about all the use cases. They're like, right, you want a documentary camera? Okay, we'll make it a little bit. You can take this bit off. You can put that on. It's going to make it a bit more lightweight. All right, you want a cinema camera? You're going to have this camera built out. Here's an accessory for you. And it's, you know, I just love the flexibility. Even though the cards are quite big, and I love the NVMe. They're expensive. NVMe drives, which makes them faster, makes no card reader, you know. Like, little things like this that they're kind of, they're like, all right, you know, let's give these people options of how they use this camera. Okay, you don't want to pay £1,000 for a memory card. Fine. Here's a casing. You can put your own NVMe in there. Yeah. It's an option. Might not be the option you want. Fine. Don't use it. But it's an option that some people can go for. And that's another, it's like Black Magic in a way that I think they do a similar thing, you know. They listen, they hear, they give you things in firmware updates, you know, the whole thing with the monitor having a tint. All right, we'll release some firmware. We'll give you an option to fix that. And I think the Kinefinity felt like that, but with build, it felt like it had gone through. You could tell that wasn't its first camera. You could tell that they've had cameras. They've gone through testing. They've gone through people talking to them, and they've listened. And I admire that in a camera brand. I really do, and I think that says a lot. And it's a really nice thing. I would love to use the camera more. I've said it a million times, and I know you fell in love with that camera a little bit. So, you know, why was that?
Yeah, man. I mean, Mark, I couldn't have said it better myself. I was pleasantly surprised about how much I liked it. You know, I'm not loyal to camera brands, but you know, if something's doing a good job for me, I don't like to change. I'm like, well, it's doing a good job for me. I don't dislike the results. If there's no reason for me to change, I won't change. But I was really pleasantly surprised by a lot of what the Mavo LF Mark II offered. And yeah, the shooting formats, you know, you talked about flexibility in terms of the build of it. The flexibility in terms of what you shoot is incredible. You know, talking open gate 3x2, You're talking normal 16:9. You're talking anamorphic. If you need to use a 6x5 part of the sensor or a 4x3 part of the sensor, you could do for your anamorphic lenses, right? And then also, cropping down to Super 35. Now, I wish I tested the Super 35 mode more than I did, just to see like what the difference in the image quality was. But the few times I used it, it looked fine. And then that shot I had of a ladybug that I cropped into Super 16, and that shot was great. There's times in the Pocket where the Pocket 6K Pro that you crop into 2.8 on the sensor to get a shot, and it is noisier. You can see that it's noisier. This one, not that. I didn't look. We were outside and there was a lot of daylight, but I didn't see much more noise. It was definitely a usable image, and it definitely made me think, oh, we could whack. Remember you remember I used to rent the Canon 8-64 from Provision, that 6x16 zoom lens? I felt like, oh, I might be able to use that on this guy and just have a whole shoot on it and shoot in 1080p on this Super 16 lens and be happy with it. So there was a lot to like about this camera. Super flexible. The shooting ProRes as well. I mean, and okay, not having a RAW option, but like I was happy with the 422 HQ in ProRes that you could shoot. And at a stretch, I would do 444, not 6K, the 4K. And the thing about it, because at first I felt a way about it. You're like, oh man, I'm going to miss Blackmagic RAW. I'm going to miss, the compressed RAW format where I could still shoot the resolution, but the file size isn't, unmanageable. But then I'm editing a film right now, and they shot an Amira in ProRes. And it's, Amira does upscaled 4K, not 4K, 4K, but upscaled. And they shot 444, and it looks great. And it's like, you wouldn't look at the film and go, oh, they haven't shot RAW there, so it's terrible. It looks brilliant. So I'm thinking like, well, this is essentially the same, not the same exact image. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it matches the Alexa, but it gives the same kind of colors and processes it in the same way. Obviously, in the highlights, it doesn't do it. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go near the Alexa. But just in terms of the colors and how it renders the image, it is similar. I'd love to do side by side, but they're similar. A lot to love about it. Yes, for the cards, I love their option for their memory cards. Having the SSDs. I would have loved CFS Express Type B though, because they're cheaper and they would have done the same thing. But at least they given the option, and hey, you give it, and it's a cool option because again, you don't need a card reader. And I think, a lot to love about it. What did you make of the image? How did you feel about the image of the camera?
So I feel like the image had it really felt indie with me. I don't know if that's because I shot open gate and that reminds me a lot of films that I've seen that are quite indie. But the stuff that I was getting, I was loving, and I was like, I sent it to a director friend of mine, Celine, and she loved the image, and she was like, oh, that's really beautiful. And Celine's a big fan of like the Florida Project. We shot a film down in Margate that was a big inspiration for, and we shot on the Ursa with quite like vintage, I can't remember the exact anamorphic lenses we used, but when I was shooting on the Kinefinity, it just reminded me of that style of film. And it made me really want to use it. And shooting open gate and that kind of squarer aspect ratio, I think because it felt like a photograph, it changed how I wanted to frame and how I wanted to kind of shoot, which I think that's normal. You put an anamorphic lens on and it has a very specific look, and that makes you want to shoot a certain way. And the Kinefinity, just shooting open gate and looking at the image and seeing that kind of big frame and, getting that sort of IMAX-esque feel for me because I'm shooting Super 35 a lot, it just really changed. I was like looking at the image and I was like, oh man, how it's handling everything right now and look how it looks. And do you know what LUT I used on it? Weirdly enough, I used the Panasonic LUT on it. And I felt like I was getting a lot of really nice footage and I like the Kinefinity look as well. I used that LUT on it, but when I was in the edit, that Panasonic LUT looks a lot nicer to me than the Alexa LUT. And I know that it's like you said, RAW. Okay. Grading footage and having RAW is incredibly flexible. gives you a lot of leeway. I've just been grading a documentary and they shot on the Pocket 4K, and having RAW and being able to drop the ISO right down to 100 when they were shooting at 800 in some very tricky conditions where it was very sunny, it gave me a lot of flexibility. And I was able to do that. And with ProRes, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to drop it down that far. Now, the difference is, I guess, with the Kinefinity, there's certain accessories that you don't get with so many other cameras. So like having the eyepiece, for instance, and using that on an incredibly sunny day is going to allow you to expose a bit better than, like, I'd imagine that camera op with the Pocket, because there aren't really many options for a Pocket to have an EVF eyepiece. There are some, but I'd imagine he was probably exposing from the screen. Quite difficult in sunny conditions, even with the Red, for instance.
The Pocket 4K, the Pocket 4K doesn't have an EVF,
Yeah. So, it's a tough one because, yes, RAW is flexible and it's nice to have, and I would prefer it. Like, the reality is I would love to have it as an option. But the other reality is that I'm probably not shooting it as much as I'm shooting ProRes for a lot of work. And that...
Yeah.
Because the RAW is like, when short films, music videos, feature films, adverts, stuff like that. But then a lot of the other stuff that I make money from doesn't need RAW. It doesn't. And sometimes it doesn't even need 4K. So it's like, I still think there's a lot of the industry that just would prefer a more compatible format to having to deal with RAW. Because, yeah, it changes the edit machine you need. Then you need to make proxies maybe, which is fine, not a problem. But still, extra time, extra cost to store. And so it's not the end of the world to not have RAW at all. And I think it's a bigger deal almost to not have ProRes in a weird way. Like, we'll get onto this in another video. Certain cameras coming out at the minute that have taken the ProRes out, and I'm looking at that and I'm like, man, that sucks. That sucks, because I would rather deliver to a client a lot of the time ProRes as an option.
Yeah, yes, I was on a job literally last week, and not last week, 2 weeks ago, and we handed off in ProRes. Could have shot in Blackmagic RAW. I'm not doing the edit. I'm just shooting it for them. But handing off in ProRes RAW, I know it's gonna work. So the flip side is, we keep talking about RAW formats. How often when you're not doing something for your own production company, for yourself, do you shoot in RAW? How often do you do it? I don't think people are handing off to clients B-RAW or even R3D. I know R3D is a more common RAW format and is widely accepted. But if I'm shooting a day of a commercial, a documentary, corporate documentary, whatever, why am I shooting in RAW? Why am I going to shoot in RAW? The client, wants to get this in and out as soon as possible in terms of in their post-production workflow and finished. They don't care about ISO and changing white balance. Just shoot it properly on the day. Whereas if you're getting paid if you're paid as a camera operator, you should be exposing properly and, white balancing properly on the day. That's your job. That's your profession, your trade. And so, when you see things like, a camera like the FX6, which is so popular, doesn't have any internal RAW. I don't know how many people are shooting ProRes RAW and handing that to clients. I really don't. But most post houses have XAVC workflows and Apple ProRes workflows. End of. There's no need to really go beyond that. And so whilst the brand name, and if they're coming on shoot, if you're already on shoot and you have the camera, you're fine. But if someone's asking, oh, what are you shooting on? And then it's, oh, this camera, it's like, well, it does do ProRes. You can have ProRes files. Then it could be like, okay, it's fine. I've never been, I don't, my clients never ask me what I'm shooting on. It's just the formats that I, hand over to the couple of clients where I hand over footage to. It's got to be ProRes at least, right? So, like you said, other cameras, and we'll talk about it maybe next week's episode, we'll talk about a camera that's taken ProRes out of it, that makes it a harder sell for me on just a day-to-day making money from it. So I think you could make good money on it. It's just sad that Kinefinity doesn't have the brand recognition. I will talk about the weak point of the camera. The weak point of the camera for me is the NDs. The just for the full disclosure, there is the Mavo LF Mark II and the Mavo S35 Mark II are based on the Mavo Edge models, which is the Kinefinity's top of the line models. The same body type, most of the same in and out points. I think there's a difference. Like there's another on the Edge 6K and 8K. They have another SDI, and then they have a D-tap on of it, and you have 2 card slots. But the big thing that they have is the END. They have an internal END on the Mavo Edge 8K and 6K. And I just felt if they managed to put that in this camera, again, there would have been no reason to buy the Edge 8K and 6K, I guess, or the 6K at least, the 8K. And I wish the Edge 6K didn't exist, so that they could have put in ND in both the LF Mark II and the S35 Mark II. Because I think if those cameras, even if they were even £1,000 more expensive, had that END internally with the options of lens mounts, and I'm going to talk about those in a second. If it had that, I'm sorry, this camera has got to be a must buy. Like as soon as I have $7,000, buy. Or as soon as I could take a mini loan for it, whatever, it would have been like no doubt, because the mounts you can have, again, the one we had an active an active E mount, Sony E mount, so you could put Sony E lenses on there, and then an active PL mount. Yeah. But they have another mount where you can swap it, called the Kine mount, that you could swap out a PL mount and a EF mount quite easily. Now, if it just had ENDs right on top of that sensor inside the camera, you could be having an ND-enabled E-mount, active E-mount camera, which only other people that have that is Sony. And to have one, you'd have to buy an FX6 to be able to have electronic ND as well. And that would have just taken this over the top. I think it would have been a real more compelling option. People would have said, well, you could do more than an FX6. Yes, my clients don't know this camera, but it can do more than an FX6 because it could do full frame and it could do 4K S35, which for me is the big, massive selling point of this camera, S35 and 4K. And of all those mount options that are made by the manufacturer, wow. Yeah. But that's the only part about it. That's the sad part about it. You have they do have an END module the EF lens mount that you put onto the Kine mount. They have versions of that has an END in it. So essentially, you would become the ND mechanism by swapping it in and out. And I guess you get used to it, but that just sounds like a bit of a ball ache, if I'm honest.
It's like and you know what? One thing that kind of bugged me about that a little bit is that in the menu system, they still have it designated to the NDs. And there isn't any NDs. So you could designate that section of the menu, in the, it's on the side and it's got a little ND section. You could designate that, and I don't think you can. There's no way for you to do it. But I just felt like software-wise, if you don't have internal NDs, you shouldn't have a section on the menu where they would go. That should be designated to maybe the LUT that you've got or something like that. You could give it another assignment, because otherwise it's essentially there forever and it means nothing and it's a wasted space. So there are certain things, maybe that'll come in a future update. Maybe you can customize it, and I just didn't find that option. But it feels like that should be reassigned.
I think that is when you put the AND module on. So when you put the EF END or the PL END on, then that screen becomes active. But I just think it's a missed opportunity. Yeah. They could have pushed those cameras, especially that S35 camera. I think it's $4,000 at the moment. If they had made it $5,000.
What's the difference in price? If you go for the next model up, let's say the Edge 6K, for instance, What's the difference in price, and what are you gaining over the Mark II? That is it just NDs for
It's,
the Edge 6K, or
it's just
do you gain anything
NDs.
else?
It's just
And
NDs.
how much more expensive is that?
So the Edge 8K, from what I've seen, it's the only difference is the END inside the camera. There's two card slots, so you don't have you could put two Kine cards at the same time. Then it has a D tap out on the body of the camera, and a third SDI, and I think there's a 3-pin LEMO as well as a 2-pin LEMO on it. Now, the difference in cost between the Edge 6K and the Mavo LF Mark II, and after I was told, and the really helpful guys in the Kinefinity forum, guys and gals, they were saying the sensor is the exact same sensor in the Edge 6K and the LF Mark II.
Yeah,
The difference in cost now, so the LF Mark II,
it's
I
10
think it's
grand.
50.
The 6K
It's
is
a
10
lot.
grand for the Edge 6K.
That's a big jump just for ENDs, and
And
I think
how much is the other one? The Mark II,
the
6K.
the so this the LF Mark II is
Yeah.
£5,500 in the UK. From
Wow, that is a big jump for just some internal NDs.
I can't justify, like, it just feels, because those, for me, those cameras are too expensive. The Edge 6K and Edge 8K, I think they're too expensive
Two
when you
card
consider the.
slots. Is that what you get? Two card slots, so there is a slight difference, right? You get the two card
Yeah,
slots, you get internal NDs. You're just trying to figure out if there's any other, like, what else about this camera
it's not.
warrants that much more, because, like, you don't
So,
need two card slots. Most cinema cameras don't have two card slots, so
but I mean, that's
why
not a
do you
big deal.
need?
That's not that big of a deal. Like, the thing about it is those models came out first. So, the Edge 8K and the 6K came out first. But I think it would have been better if they had. I don't think they thought about their roadmap enough, and maybe they realized the Edge 8K and 6K weren't selling as well, and they realized we need to release a cheaper version of the camera. And for me, I would have, you keep the Edge 8K, maybe bring the Edge 8K down, to, because I think the price
The
was
8K is 12. It's 12. So I don't understand. You might as well put in an extra 2K and go for the 8K, because at least then you're getting 8K, right? You're getting a
That's
jump in
it.
resolution.
That's the thing. I think
The 6K doesn't make sense. Price wise, it should be priced closer to 8,000 or even 7,000
I
to
think
kind of make it. I don't understand it. Price wise, I don't get it. I don't get why that is what it is, and I don't think it fits into the. It shouldn't be 10 grand. It should
it
be
shouldn't be, because
8 grand max.
the thing, and, like, look, I think they're a great lot of cameras, but the problem they have is brand recognition. If I'm gonna spend 12K on a camera that my clients haven't heard of, like, it's gotta blow my mind, and I'm sure the 8K will blow your mind. But the problem you have is, at that cost, it's like, well, I can buy an FX9. My clients know it's a Sony. It's something you put in your website that you own this type of camera, and you'll get the work. I don't think if you put your Kinefinity in your website, they're not Googling Kinefinity operators, or people are Googling
No.
FX6 operators, Komodo operators, FX9 operators. They are, sadly, I don't like that it works that way, but they are Googling for that. Or they're not Googling for Kinefinity owner operators. Obviously, you're still going to charge your rate. You're going to include your camera cost in your rate. I'm not suggesting that the camera is then free. No, you still charge it out, however much
Yeah.
decide to charge out to your clients. But it's not got that brand recognition. And I think if they had been aggressive and said, look, we want to just sell these cameras. Yes, the early adopters were sorry, but we're going to sell this camera, and we're going to sell it for $6,500 and include internal NDs. That's going to give people a real, like, it will blow for me, in terms of the specs. I know it's not got RAW, but I think it would really trump any Komodo. It would be like, well, this has got internal NDs
Yeah.
in it. Like, and you have all those flexibility
So
formats. XLRs
So
on the
let's
top,
just talk
everything.
about that. Because, like, right, you've got, let's say, the Kinefinity, the Mavo Mark II, the Komodo, very similar price, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Basically the same price. So you've got on the red side, let's say, what are the positives that you've got? Well, for starters, you've got a red. That's so brand recognition to some degree is going to be higher than Kinefinity. I'm not saying Kinefinity isn't a good brand. I'm just saying that red is slightly higher, however much higher on that totem pole. It's better. You're getting raw, so that's another plus for red. You're getting raw. Um, what else are you getting on the Kinefinity side? You're getting full frame, so that's a positive. You're not shooting Super 35. You're also getting higher frame rates at higher resolutions. That's another plus. You're getting more built into the camera. You're getting what else are you like? What else are you getting that is a plus? Because it's quite similar in terms of like, you've got maybe 3 pluses for red, 3 pluses for Kinefinity. What is it like? Ultimately, it comes down to whether you want raw or whether you want full frame, right?
I think if you're
Like,
making an actual decision that's not based on what what I could sell to clients, I
yeah,
mean, for me, when you look at the feature set, yes, you can say the global shutter is going to be better for your camera
global
movement,
shutter, of course, is another
but
thing. Yeah,
like I can't even shoot a Super 35, a full Super 35 or full sensor readout at 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 50p in the Komodo. I think the Komodo is a great
no,
camera. It's not got built-in internal NDs, so you'll need to still find an ND
mm-hmm.
solution. And I think Red's END solution is about $3,000. So, and again, that's only to PL. So
Yeah,
there's a lot there. There's a lot there
but there
from
are cheaper options
there is, and there is with the
on both of
Kinefinity.
these. Yeah, both of these cameras do have cheaper
And
options.
because of the, again, with having that lens flexibility, because the Kinefinity becomes an active E mount, so you can
Yeah,
just buy the active E mount, forget the Kinefinity mount, and with the active E mounts, there's tons of people out there making variable NDs. I'm thinking of Micah's. It's because I looked into this.
yeah,
Micah's E to EF mount module, which has got drop-in filters. You can put a different drop-in filter that's higher quality in there than the one Mica provide, and that goes to EF. No problem. Boom, use your EF
yeah.
lenses. For PL, obviously you could use there's tons of E to EF, so E to PL adapters that you can then use PL lenses with internal ND or with a
Right.
back ND. The issue you're gonna have is there's gonna be some lenses that when you put them in, I think like the Viltrox, they're quite deep as PL lenses. That you'll
Great Joy, 50
the
mil.
Great
That's too
Joy,
deep for the. Yeah.
it'll hit the glass that's in there. So you're
Hmm.
gonna have to be mindful of that. So there are gonna be some instances where you just want a tube that's just an E to PL tube that goes all the way, and you'll
Yeah.
have to have a matte box on the front of it. So I think like for me, again, my clients don't really care what I'm shooting on. It's just more that I care what I'm shooting on, and I can do
Yeah.
it has everything I need. I think I'd go for the Kinefinity over the red Komodo every day of the week, every day,
Hmm.
twice on a Sunday, to be honest, because
Yeah.
of it's like the Komodo's a great camera, but I think it's more of it feels like the Komodo X should have been what the Komodo is now, right? And if if it
Mm.
was the Komodo X at the same price, or maybe $6 or $7, I think it's 8 or something, or 8,500. If it was at the same price as if it was at like more of a 65, just 7, then I'd say, well, that's trickier because you have the higher frame rates, you have the global shutter, because again, the other thing that I didn't test much of, and I don't know about you, I didn't test the low light. We tested like how, I had higher ISOs during the day inside the interior, but just
Mm.
outside at night. And I know the Komodo isn't very strong in low light, right? I mean, am I right in not saying that?
So I would say that if you're hoping to up the ISO on the Komodo to like 3200 and have clean footage, it's unlikely. It's definitely a nicer noise than like the Pocket I would say, like a more consistent noise. If you keep that ISO around 800 and you film at night, then your blacks are going to be clean, right? So if you buy a light, whatever, you're getting light, fine. You know, it doesn't take much really. An LED panel, and you're
Yeah,
shooting at night, and it's fine.
yeah,
Stick to 800, I would say, in the dark, and you're at least not going to have noise in the shadows and that's manageable. For me, that is like, you know, yeah, Sony's and stuff like that, you can up the ISO, you can shoot in the dark. It's very unlikely I'm in that scenario. It's almost never that I'm in that scenario where I can't light or where I'm shooting in
yeah.
that level of dark. But I did take that, and yeah, I wish I'd taken the Kinefinity out and just tested that.
It's just the time, isn't
Instinct,
it?
it's probably going to be cleaner. My instinct is telling me it's probably going to be a bit cleaner, but I don't know without testing it how far you could push those that I saw on the Kinefinity, because I was pretty much sticking to 800 the whole time. So yeah, I'm not sure, and it always kind of gets to like doesn't get to me, but it when people are like, "Oh, that's a rubbish low light camera," it's like, well, cinema cameras aren't designed to be good low like
Yeah,
good good low light. Like, what does that even mean? Like, you know, the vast majority of people who have a cinema camera aren't hoping to put the ISO up to 3200. Like, you just aren't usually doing that. Um, so yeah, it's like, yeah, the I wish that the Komodo had a bit more in terms of range. I wish that, you know, you could push the ISO up a little bit and get better footage, but yeah, you can't. And I hope I would always be lighting. And if you're lighting in a dark scenario, you're going to get clean footage. I'd imagine on both these cameras, on any camera, if you're lighting in, and it doesn't take much, you know, just
yeah,
just a small amount of light, and you're going to have enough on either one of these cameras. And they
yeah.
both seem to, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I think ProRes and stuff, I'm not sure if you're going through ProRes because it's not RAW, if there's any kind of internal noise reduction that the camera is doing. Obviously with RAW, you can't have that. You can't have, and it will bypass any noise reduction, for instance, like because it's a RAW file format. DaVinci Resolve, which, you know, I grade
Yeah,
in,
that's a great
has
point. Yeah,
amazing noise reduction options that you can use. But yeah, I will say, you know, I've not me, but other DPs that have used the Komodo that have used my camera, I've seen it be too noisy when they've pushed it too much, when they've, you know, not lit enough in dark scenarios, and it has been. And you can't pull that back in DaVinci. There's no way, you know, of getting it back. But also the final kind of version of the film, when it's been exported, gone down to 4K, been put on YouTube, it's less noticeable. But yeah, I would love a bit more range in the Komodo in terms of give me a usable 1600 ISO that's usable in dark scenarios. That'd be nice. I don't expect 32 really on any cinema camera. I'm not really expecting to be able to get to 3200. Even the Pocket 6K, I would say, even though it's got dual ISOs, you
yeah.
know,
The Pocket
3200
6K.
is still noisy.
Yeah, I would on the Pocket 6K for instance, when I'm shooting it, even though the second base ISO is 3200, it's super noisy. Like I don't like to go
Yeah.
above 1250 on that camera, but and because you know your dynamic range is put in a different way. But yeah, you make a great point right there. You know, there's nothing lighting couldn't solve. But just in terms of like the one time I used it at a 2000 ISO, it was inside. It was inside a church, and it was there was light there, like there was sunlight coming. Because again, the whole point of high ISO isn't that you make it's not night vision. It's that it allows you have to use less light, but you still need a light there
Hmm.
getting an exposure to that then has those contrast ratios on the whole sensor. If you're just gonna feed it darkness, it's gonna be noisy no matter what camera.
Yeah.
If you're gonna feed a camera that's at ISO 400 and it's just darkness, it's gonna be noisy. It's like it's
Mm.
just the way you have to light something. It's just the amount of light you'll need to be less, but you still need to be
Yeah.
having a key light of some sort on there, right? So I think when you consider that, I really love that it was able to do that. For me, I didn't test the sensor speed, the sensor readout speed. The handheld I did, I wasn't like thrown off by it. But again, my barriers, I'm my threshold for what is okay is lower because I'm used to the pocket, and obviously it has a very slow sensor readout. So
Yeah.
I didn't think the sensor readout speed was as good as like I say an FX6 handheld, but it was definitely it was usable. And again, if I'm using an easy rig with it and not doing my weird holding the weight out here, if I'm using an easy rig with it, you're gonna have a little bit more success anyway. Because the same with my 6K is that once you have more weight on the
Easy
camera.
rig. Easy rigs. I used to use easy rigs, right? I don't like easy rigs anymore, and I'll tell you why, right? Because when you've got, and obviously loads of people use them, so I'm not entirely right here, but what I find about easy rigs is when you've got a cable coming down from the top of the camera, any sort of movement past just like body movement, and it's putting tension on the top of the camera, which is kind of weird. The thing I prefer, what I think gives you much better results, or at least me, a cine saddle, right? And you don't need to spend hundreds of pounds on a cine saddle. Hang on a second. You don't need to spend a fortune on this, right? This is like a proper cine saddle. It's just a beanbag. You put it over you like this. You put the camera on top of it, and then you're not getting any weird movement from like something attached, a string attached to the top of the camera. Yeah. I stopped using an easy rig like probably a couple of years ago, and I started using a cine saddle slung over me with just the camera sitting on top of it. And in my opinion, I get way better results with a cine saddle than an easy rig. And a cine saddle is much cheaper.
I have to. Well, when I Google, I'll have to check it out. But every time I've looked at the cine saddle, it's like £500 for a bag, and I'm like, yeah.
They're ridiculous. Make your own. Just make your own. Like, there's got to be a way to make your own.
You should do a video on that.
You should do a video on
it. We make a cine saddle and test it out.
Budget cine saddle.
Yeah. I'll help you with that one. But I think I think as a camera, there's a lot there to like, and again, like the FX6 is probably still a little bit better value for money. No, the FX6 is still a better content capture camera, because the thing about it is if you need to get a really fast turnaround project or a corporate interview, or just like you're shooting a mini a documentary and you're following people around, you don't know what you're going to do, the FX6 is probably still the most suitable for that, because it's got internal NDs, the codec is lightweight, it's got all the inputs that you'd want, XLRs. The Komodo doesn't have XLRs, the Kinefinity LF does. And so it's all those professional things, and again the codec is quite small, although with ProRes proxy, you can do ProRes proxy on the Kinefinity, so you have a little bit more versatility there with it. And I think the thing about that is, but that's still the FX6 for it really is the ideal quick turnaround project camera. However, my problem with the FX6, if you shoot in anything other than 4K, it's kind of not very good. Try and shoot 1080p, try and go in S35 mode, forget it. I just don't. It's not as sharp. I'll put it up against the 6K Pro when you're in S35 mode, because it goes down to 1080p, and it's just, obviously it would be. It's using a smaller part of a 4K sensor. But basically, the thing with the FX6 is, for me, to get the best out of that camera, it's always got to stay full frame and in 4K. If you try and go below that, in my opinion, the image just starts to look really old mirrorless camera-like, in my opinion. And people don't shoot an S in its own. Stay in S-Log3 and 4K, So where the Kinefinity passes that is, again, it shoots S in Super 35 mode in 4K. And the FX6, it goes down, it crops down to 1080p, which, I don't know. I just, obviously it's an amazing camera for the money and the value and the reliability. But I for me personally, I want an S35 camera because I want to still use amazing PL lenses and it be 4K.
Yeah. So
super flexible. I mean, I love it. Now, let's honest answer. If you don't have a camera and someone just gave you
Mm-hmm.
you have £8,000 to spend on a camera system, which are you going for? The Komodo FX6 or the Mavo LF Mark II? 8 grand today, right now.
That's such a difficult. For me, one of the reasons from moving from Blackmagic to Red was brand recognition. As much as don't like that, it matters to some degree, and there's a certain amount of reliability that comes with Red. I didn't test the Mavo out for long enough to know how reliable it is, but that's a really difficult decision, and I just don't know. I feel like my answer is the Red, but I own a Red, and I feel like is that just me, feel wanting to feel like I made the right choice? I think if the Mavo had RAW, it would be a much easier choice to make, but it doesn't, and it's just a really that's a really difficult choice. I think I'm going to just say Red just because, you know, yeah, because of the flexibility. Global shutter as well is another thing that I really like having. But it's like there is a fraction, like there's not much in it. There is not much in it at all. And, right now I think I want the Mavo because I haven't had it and I haven't had time to play with it. And I just want it as a second camera because, I've said this in my review. Those cameras are so different that there are just different jobs. If I'm shooting an advert, I'm probably I'm picking up the Komodo. If I'm shooting depends on the kind of film I'm shooting. If I'm shooting a super indie drama comedy that, I'm probably picking up the Kinefinity because, so it's like, I don't know. It depends on the project to why I'm picking each one of these cameras, and they're not it's probably not this. I'm not even. It's not definitely no crossover in terms of what I want, I think. So I just don't know. Even the kind of documentary I was shooting would depend on which camera I'm picking up. So it's a really, I want both. That's my instinct, is I just want both these cameras. And even I want the FX6 because, that's also a fantastic camera. And I said this, there's probably more jobs that I'm picking up the FX6. You can go out of the FX6 into an external recorder and shoot RAW, right? That's an option.
Yeah, but again, you can. I mean, Mark, you can. It's just there's loads of options. I think, if I'm honest, I'm not just I'm not just a camera operator. My main focus as a shooting director is to just make as much movies as possible, and do some commercials, some corporate, some jobs where I hand over footage to clients and don't worry about it again. But I know my focus over the next few years is to just make more films and to make a feature film. And so I know if I was a working DP, that was, if in my alternate universe version of me, that's a working DP, I'd probably buy Burano. But then my alternate universe version of me, I'd probably go for the Red. Because as a working DP, you're not worrying about having to convince clients about stuff. But that's again as a DP. If I'm just wanting to make tons of money as a camera operator, the FX6, because it's a no nonsense camera. If you're doing loads of corporate stuff, it's gonna be fine. You don't have to worry about XLR inputs. It's gonna be so versatile. You could do the occasional TV thing, and it kind of sets you up to get ready to shoot in a Venice, right?
Yeah.
But but the thing about the FX6, and it's a really weird thing to quantify, it doesn't excite me to shoot an independent film on an FX6. It doesn't. I love Sony's, and maybe I love Sony's, but I've never, when I wanted to make one of my short films, I've never wanted to pick up a Sony. I've always looked at the options. There's a Blackmagic or whether it's Red. For some reason, I gravitated to those cameras. Now I know people will be going, well, that's crazy. It's a good camera. Of course it is. I'm just saying how I felt. Even being on set with it, it feels like it's meant to get corporate stuff.
Yeah.
That's a really weird thing to say. Whereas the Red or the Black Magic, I feel like I'm making a movie now, and some of that's
Yeah.
how the image looks on the camera. And the Kinefinity makes me feel like I'm making a movie. It makes me feel we're gonna be something. Maybe it's an independent movie, right? It really makes me excited. Similar to like Black Magic, the image that you get straight out the camera makes me excited. The options. Oh, guys, can we shoot open gate today? Can we shoot open gate for this feature? Yeah. Do we need to get a new camera? No, just use that one. Oh, we want to shoot anamorphic. Oh, great. Oh, sure. Actually, we could. I want to use these lenses, but it's only S35. Okay, that's fine. Oh, actually, you want to be a full frame. The full frame look for that. Oh, yeah, that's fine too. There's all these options there. So for me, and again, but obviously the thing about making independent movies, I'm going to work with a DP that's going to have their own camera, whether it's a Red Komodo or an Alexa 35 or whoever the DP that I work with will have whatever camera they'll have. I'll just use whatever they say. Yeah, I'm not going to budge.
Yeah.
I'm not going to force a camera on them. But if I'm in a situation where I've got to shoot a film myself, or it's my production company doing it, I'm like, yeah, well, this camera does it all. Yes, there's little things. I think the dynamic range isn't as good. If I'm being 100% honest, there was some times where the highlights clipped a little too quickly, and I think, but again, we didn't optimize the exposure on the test that we did. More on the short film I did, that was more. I never had any clipping issues, but I didn't try the highlight priority, which is again another flexible thing. So, yeah, I guess I don't have an answer. I I think it really depends on how
right?
what you're doing as a filmmaker and as
Yeah.
yeah. It's no answer. Sorry, guys. There's no answer for you.
Never an answer. And it's also, we didn't even talk about like just how you want your camera to be laid out in terms of build and stuff, because that's obviously a whole other aspect of when you pick your camera, like how it is to hold, how it is to rig up, how you're going to be using it. And and then brand as well. Like obviously a lot of people are in the Sony ecosystem, and when it comes to Red, there's no option for you if you've got E-mount lenses. But with the Kinefinity, obviously there's they've thought about that. At least I don't think there's any option for an E-mount on a Komodo. Is there? Is there an option for an E-mount?
No, you can't. It's impossible because they both have the RF
So,
mount is the flange. But you know what? Because we have so much to talk about, but we're going to save some for next week. We're going to leave some meat on the boat for next week because we're going to talk about the Vespa retros next week and some of the other camera announcements, right? But we're coming to 50 something minutes, so we want to keep these episodes concise for you guys. So, next week we're going to keep going into this, but I think in summary, Kinefinity is a great option for people. Check it out. If you're a filmmaker, check it out. I'd love for it to be more accepted, more on set, but the industry, we're a weird industry.
it'll get there.
Yeah,
It'll get there.
Great community, and great camera. But I'm gonna let Mark close out this week.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and also don't forget to follow our other channels. You got Films by AW, That Camera Nerd. Yeah, podcast now on its own channel. 3 channels in total. Subscribe to all of them for great content. Come back next week. We're going to be talking about camera announcements. We're going to be talking about the vintage Vespas, the retro lenses that we got to try out. And yeah, don't forget to check out our videos on these cameras, the tests that we did, the lenses, everything, because there's some really good footage in there, good content if you're thinking about buying any of these cameras. And thanks again to Pro AV for lending them to us. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. Hopefully get
Pro
some
AV
more
in the house.
tests for you guys. Yeah, Pro AV, great. If you're looking to buy kit, get in touch with them. They've got a showroom. You can pop down there, try out most of the stuff that you want to buy, probably. And it's a really, really great to get hands-on experience with that kind of stuff before you buy it, because
100%.
you might realize something that you don't like about it, or you might realize that there's something else that they've got. And really knowledgeable guys down there that will talk to you about the kit, give you recommendations. Really good way to buy test kit. So thanks, Pro AV, and thanks to you guys for watching, and come back next week. Stay shooting.